The Evening Star, Washington, D.C., Wednesday, November 5th, 1924. Personal victory for Coolidge seen. Faith of people in his integrity obliterated corruption issue in fight by Frederick William Wile. No presidential election was ever so easy to diagnose as the landslide which has swept Calvin Coolidge to victory. It is a personal triumph, pure and simple, almost unparalleled in our modern political history. The result is immeasurable, less a vindication of the Republican Party or even of Republican principles than it is a stupendous vote of confidence in Calvin Coolidge. That is the long and short of the presidential election of 1924. There will be arguments in plenty to prove why the victors conquered and why the conquered were vanquished. There will be talk of the wave of prosperity on the farms which sent the rural West to the polls in an avalanche for Coolidge. There will be the explanations that Davis was hopelessly handicapped from the start by Democratic strife and by the Bryan millstone. But when all is said and done, when the credits and debits have been balanced, it will be discovered that it was overwhelmingly the country's deep seated, impregnable confidence in the president that elected him. Prosperity was considered. Nothing else seriously counted. Hardly anything else was in the voters' mind. Their thoughts were concentrated on what Senator Moses of New Hampshire called the calm and cautious Christian character of Calvin Coolidge. That is what the country voted for on Tuesday. East and West, North and Southwest. That is why, with the exception of the invincibly Democratic South and a couple of southwestern border states and Lafayette, Wisconsin, the nation almost made the election of Coolidge unanimous. There are, of course, correlated reasons for the president's smashing victory. Prosperity is the foremost of them, but even that reason is directly associated with the paramount cause of confidence in Coolidge. Prosperity having arrived, the people determined to risk no loss of it by midstream change of administrations in Washington. They convinced themselves that there would be an incalculably stronger prospect of keeping the times good by perpetuating Coolidge in the White House than by replacing him. The nation directly links up the president's calm and caution with prosperity. Indeed, the Coolidge landslide plainly indicates that without those qualities in the leadership of the United States at this juncture, the people felt their welfare might be in jeopardy. They decided not to make a change. They voted to let well enough alone. Court issue a factor. Against that stone wall of reasoning, the attacks of the Democratic and Progressive parties were launched in vain. It was almost as if the country had shut its collective ear to the pleadings, the arguments, and the invectives of the opposition. As for Lafayette, his introduction of the Supreme Court issue with its frontal attack on the fundamentals of the Constitution presented the Republicans with defensive material that probably would, of itself, almost have been sufficient to win the country. When Lafayette added government ownership of railroads to his platform, he simply made it easier for the conservatives to rally around their regular standard, the Republican Party, and for Democratic conservatives, who are numerous, to rally with them as the surest way of warding off the peril of radicalism. The inglorious showing of the third party, amounting to a rout, is one of the glaring results of the election. Mr. Davis concentrated his fire on Mr. Coolidge with regard to three major issues. He stressed corruption in the Republican administration, assailed the latter's isolationist foreign policy, and attacked the Fortney-McCumber tariff. It is an amazing fact that the country failed to react appreciably to a single one of these issues. Teapot Dome, Fall, Doherty, Forbes, and the other names under which Davis and the Democrats catalog Republican misgovernment proved entirely incapable of rousing the nation's emotions. Faith in Coolidge honesty. Perhaps they savored too strongly of ancient history. Perhaps if Fall, Doherty, and Forbes could have been investigated in the closing weeks of the campaign instead of 8 or 10 months ago, deficiencies in the Interior and Justice Departments and the Veterans Bureau might have proved the undoing of the Republican Party. But there is now reason to doubt if even this would have happened, for people throughout the campaign, every time Democratic or Progressive spokesman brought up Teapot Dome or Forbes, would say, well, Coolidge didn't have anything to do with them. He's honest. Nothing like that will ever happen while he's president. So the electorate refused to visit upon the present head of the administration the shortcomings of a prior regime. It gave Coolidge a clean bill of health. It gave no heed to the opposition's argument that ours is a system of party government, that the head of a party, even if not directly implicated, must be held to strict accountability for party deeds and party misdeeds. The foreign policy and tariff arguments of his antagonists also failed to damage Coolidge. On the contrary, they helped him. In any other foreign policy than the one Mr. Coolidge has pursued, and in any other tariff policy than the one now in force, the people saw a menace to prosperity. So they voted to change neither of them. They saw no virtue either in larger government commitments abroad or in any tinkering with the tariff. Davis given bad start. It would be idle to deny that apart from his stranglehold on public confidence, the sun shone on Calvin Coolidge from a variety of other directions. He was peculiarly fortunate in the circumstances under which his chief opponent, John W. Davis, was pitted against him. No candidacy, Democratic or otherwise, was ever born under less fortuitous stars. It was conceived in party strife and begotten in incurable rancor. Madison Square Garden, with its gaping wounds, branded John W. Davis with the scar of defeat in November as long ago as the middle of July. That was disaster number one. Then came Davis's own choice of Charles W. Bryan for his vice presidential running mate. That was casualty number two. Then ensued, in a spirit of gratitude, which does honor to John W. Davis' manliness, his selection of his friend, Clem L. Shaver of West Virginia, as the inexperienced campaign manager. That was misfortune number three. Then, as the campaign proceeded, there was revealed Mr. Davis' own inability to stir the country to any impassioned interest in him. That was ill luck number four. Then nature, at home and abroad, smiled benevolently upon agricultural situation, obliterating the western farm grouch as if by magic. That was catastrophe number five for the Democrats. There were others as doleful months rolled by, but those just named were enough. They proved to be insurmountable. Hardly any Democratic candidate could have overcome or survived them. Incidentally, but by no means insignificantly, there was the astute management of the Republican campaign. All along the line, it represented a brand of generalship, strategy, and acumen which the Democrats at no stage could match or cope with.